Hi guys. So I thought that I would do a November wrap up today for all the books that I've read this month. I have a reading goal of 50 books for the year. Now I just started reading again in August for the first time since like junior high, and I got really into it. So I thought it'd be cool to set a reading goal for myself of 50 books from August to December. And I'm honestly getting pretty close. I'm at like 39 out of 50 books, which means next month in December, I'll have to read 11 to actually knock that goal out. Just to quickly show you guys, I have read 10 books this month. About half of them were library books, which is pretty awesome. I'll get into what I thought about all of the books, what I rated them, and if I would recommend them to you guys now. So the first book that I read this month was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was my pick for my book of the month in October, and I finally got around to reading it this month. I literally read this on like the first of the month. I was really excited to get into it because I've never read a V.E. Schwab book before. I've never read anything by her before, but obviously she's a really popular author in the YA fantasy genre. So I've been really curious to read her things. It's just that most of her other books from what I've seen are based on like superheroes, and that's not my thing. Like I love superhero movies, but I don't like superhero books, if that makes sense. So I was really excited to hear that she was coming out with this book. The premise sounded exactly like something I'd be interested in. One of my all-time favorite movies is actually a movie called The Age of Adeline, starring Blake Lively. And I don't know if you guys have heard this before. I feel like nobody talks about this movie, but it's actually crazy because both of these characters in the movie and in the book are named Adeline, and neither of them age. So I was really excited because The Age of Adeline is an absolutely beautiful, stunning movie. It's very simple and cute and happy, and I absolutely loved it. So I went into this book low-key having expectations because of that comparison. I know that's like unfair to this book because it's not related in any way, shape, or form, but the similarities and everything, I think I just got really hyped for it. So I don't know how well received this book is. It seems like, from what I've seen on Goodreads, that a lot of people seem to like this book, and I gotta say I am not one of them. Now, I'm not a particularly critical reader. I just read things based off of my enjoyment of them. And I don't know, I realized quickly reading this book that V. Schwab's writing style is not exactly my thing because I don't really love flowery, overly descriptive things. Like there are a lot of times in this book where she describes one thing for like a whole paragraph, or she talks about the same thing over and over. I think repetitiveness is kind of the theme of this book, honestly. Like this is a thick book. It's like 450 pages, which is not that thick actually. It just kind of looks thick. But the fact is that majority of this book is just us reliving parts of Addie's life over and over with the same thing happening nonstop. And it only really gets interesting in maybe like the last 100 pages when, you know, all of the drama really happens. Oh, I should also say that I'm going to try not to spoil anything that's in these books in case you guys want to read them or anything. So I'm just going to try to describe the books as best as I can. And I feel like I should also let you guys know that I actually don't really go into books knowing much usually. Like, aside from what I've heard or read online, a lot of times I won't read like inserts of books to see what they're about, unless it's a book that I've genuinely never heard of and I obviously need to know the premise to see if I'm gonna be interested. Aside from that, I typically like to go into books not knowing anything. So that's how I pretty much went in for all of these books. And so my reaction might be a little bit different from people who went in knowing what to kind of expect, I guess. But yeah, so I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. But to be honest, that is almost completely and solely because of the fact that I can tell that this is a well-written book. Like, I know that your rating is usually supposed to be like, you know, subjective to you and everything. But I gotta say, like, as far as my interest level, it was probably like a 2.5 stars for me. But the writing, granted, not my style, not my taste, I could definitely see that it was a well-written book. I could see why people enjoyed it, and it was pretty well like hashed out. The fact that this woman was able to write centuries of a lifetime in this book, like following her throughout, you know, history and everything, I was like, I have to give props to that because I'm not someone who could ever do that, honestly. So I gave it 3.5 stars, but honestly, I don't think I will ever pick up this book again. And that's so rare for me to say. I would say pretty much anything that I rate over 2 stars, 2.5 stars, I would be willing to pick up again, which I'm not sure what that really means and says about this book, but I honestly can't see myself ever reading this again because it was just kind of tedious. I will say one thing about this is that the cover, not particularly this cover, but the covers that I've seen for this book, like all the different editions and even the normal edition, are just stunning. Like, I didn't enjoy this book. I never want to pick it up again, but I love how it looks on a shelf. I honestly just want to collect them just to have them, but I'm someone who doesn't like having multiple editions of books, so I realistically will just be keeping this one since I won't be picking it up in the future, probably ever again anyway. The next book that I read this month was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is the first Marissa Meyer book that I've ever read. I know that she's like a prolific author. I feel like I've seen a lot of her works. I'm really interested in reading the Lunar Chronicles. It's actually really high on my TBR, but this book happened to be available at my library, so I figured that I would pick it up, and it was such a good read. I enjoyed this so much. Now, for standalone books, I feel like I have a slightly higher expectation of them than, you know, books in series, because you have to do it really well to be able to tie off a story completely from start to finish in just one book. To have like a rich, believable world with rich, believable characters with thorough backstories and everything, to have all of that crammed into one book is a big deal. Now, I loved the main characters in this book, Kath and Jest. Like, Jest is so, oh my god. He's the type of character that I love, like an unpredictable, dark-haired, like adorable, amazing, soft, fluffy guy who will do anything for the love of his life. Like, I just love that kind of stuff. And for Kath, I loved seeing all of the changes and growth that she went through from the beginning of the book to the very end. I really wanted to pick up a book that would be easy to read after reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, because that book felt so tedious for me getting through it. Like, I finished it fairly quickly, but I was pushing myself to get through it. Versus this book, I read it from start to finish so quickly. I enjoyed every aspect of it. It was really great. Oh, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So the next 2 books that I read this month were actually books that were recommended to me by the library. So my library has a premium service kind of thing where when you reserve your books online, you have the option to add on a premium service where they will select books to add onto your rentals, either based off of the books that you are currently reserving, or they have like a comment section where you can write down what kind of genres you like or what kind of books you like, and they'll go based off of that. So I like to do that pretty much every time I borrow books because it's a cool way to get out of my comfort zone. I'm very picky with the kind of books that I like. I'm very particular. So I like having options that I've never heard of before recommended to me. So then I'll do a quick glimpse into what the book is about. I'll check out Goodreads, see what people say, and then based off of that, I'll usually decide whether or not I want to read them. Now, normally they give me like 8 to 10 books, and out of those books, I will usually find maybe 2 or 3 that sound interesting enough for me to read. So for this month, it was actually these 2 books. So I'll get into this one in a second. But the first book that I wanted to talk about is The Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I've never heard of that last name before. But basically, this is like a kind of retelling of the story of the Red Shoes, which I feel like pretty much everyone is like vaguely familiar with the idea. But the basic original story is about these red shoes. When people wear them, they are forced to dance until they basically die. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this book that stood out to me was that we're seeing the perspectives of 2 women from 2 different like eras. So one is set in summer of 1518 and the other one is 5 centuries later. So honestly, going into this book, I knew nothing about it and I had no expectations for it because library books in general, I don't really have high expectations for because they don't know me personally. So the books that they recommend, it could be a big hit or a miss. But even more so, there aren't many reviews for this on Goodreads. So, you know, there isn't too much to go off of. Now, the reason why I gave it a 4 stars instead of maybe like a 3-star or less is because of the diversity rep in this book. I thought it was so well done. The main representation that we have is of Romani people, which I don't feel like I've ever read. I've never even heard other people talk about that in books, in YA fantasy especially. Now in this book, there are like 3 main characters, and 2 of the 3 characters are Romani. They're actually related. One of them is set in 1518 and the other one is in current day. It's interesting to see the perspective of these 2 different characters from 2 totally different eras talking about the persecution and the racism and the judgment that they have faced just because of their heritage. The other main character is Latina. It's great to read from another minority's perspective. Now, the thing that I loved the most, the reason why I think I gave it a 4 stars is because this kind of like elevated it for me, is that the character from 1518, her love interest is actually a transgender man. He has bound himself and has always recognized himself as a man. It was really, really great to read the representation of them kind of navigating their relationship and the expectations back then in the 1500s, not only being Romani, but also being a transgender person in like, you know, a small town where everybody kind of knows everybody's business. And so it was really, really cool to read about that. Now, I can't personally speak to the actual accurate representation of any of these characters because I obviously don't identify with any of them, but it was really, really great to read in such a simple book that I just went in honestly thinking it was a retelling of The Red Shoes, and I got something completely different, something so much more complex and so much more interesting. So I honestly think if you have this in your local library to read, I would pick this up, check it out. It's a quick read, it's very short, and it was just so interesting. Now, there were a lot of great quotes from this book that I wrote down in my reading journal, but I just wanted to highlight one of my absolute favorite ones. So this is from the perspective of the character in 1518, the woman who is dating the transgender man. So she says, "Offense. Lala almost kicks up from her chair at the word. In this proud country, so many men pay no price for forcing themselves on women, but for a man to want a man, for a woman to care for a woman, or for a girl like Lala to love a boy who is given a girl's name at birth, these are all offenses." I loved that so much. That is so woke, even in 1518. The next book that was recommended to me was The Queen's Assassin by Melissa de la Cruz. I have never read anything by this author. I've never even heard of her before, but when I looked her up online, it looks like the main thing that she's known for is writing the Descendants books, which I think is like a movie series on Disney or something like that. I didn't know that they had books as well, but I think that's what she's known for, is writing those books. So once I found that out, I kind of realized the level of writing that I should expect, and boy, did I get that. Now, this isn't the worst written book that I've ever read, but a lot of parts felt like I was kind of reading a 16-year-old's writing, if that makes sense. Now, there are a lot of talented 16-year-old writers, so I don't want to be generalizing all 16-year-olds. I'm just saying it felt young, like the writing felt incredibly simple, like incredibly simple. So I wasn't a big fan of the writing style. And once I picked up on that, I was like, okay, now I know what to expect for the rest of the book. The reason why I probably chose this book out of all the other library books to read is because it the premise very vaguely reminded me of Throne of Glass, which is my probably all-time favorite book series. Like, I have a lot of book series that I love in YA fantasy, but Throne of Glass is, oh my God, masterpiece. Love it. Absolutely love it. So obviously when I read about another Queen's Assassin, I was intrigued. Now, this book shows the perspective of 2 characters. One is Cal Holt, who is notoriously known in the kingdom as being the Queen's Assassin. He didn't have a choice in that. It's basically he was bloodbound by his father. His father couldn't finish a mission that he was tasked to do, so that ended up forcing Cal and any of his future children to also take on that role. The other perspective is a character named Shadow. I think that's another aspect of this book that kind of bothered me a little bit, is the fact that the main character's name is Shadow and we have no inkling of what her actual name is. And so it was just kind of a little bit weird for me. Like, I don't know. There's something about having a character named Shadow, like very seriously calling herself Shadow, being referenced as Shadow by everyone she knows. Like, her aunts who raised her and her mother call her Shadow. Like, I don't know. It was just a little weird for me. I gave this book a 3 stars out of 5 because it was just okay. Like a 3 stars means like, I liked it, it was all right, it was nothing special, and that's the definition of this book. Now, the whole time that I was reading this, I was thinking, okay, this is probably like a 2.5 stars because the writing and what was happening and everything just about it was not spectacular. The only reason I raised it to a 3 was because of the twist at the end. I feel like if I had given this book just a little bit more credit for its writing, then I would have been able to predict what the twist was at the end. But the fact is that I truly had no expectations for this book. I didn't expect a twist at all. I didn't expect anything out of it because it was just so simple that when the twist came, I was like, whoa, I was genuinely shocked. And it's not even that great of a twist, but it was interesting enough that it bumped up to a 3 stars for me. Now, this book is part of a series, apparently. There is going to be a second book that I think is released in 2021, and I will not be reading that book. I enjoyed this enough that I gave it a 3 stars, but I have no interest in reading the second book. So I'm just gonna consider this a standalone. The next books that I read were the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series. This is like a really great way to knock out a reading goal, is just to read a bunch of books in a series because you want to read them back to back and it knocks out the goals faster. Now, originally I had no interest in reading these books when I first heard about them because I'm not the biggest fan of YA contemporary, and high school romances and drama are not my thing. But the reason why I ended up picking them up from the library was because I was watching Chanel's video on Chanel Time, and she was talking so passionately about the reasons why she loved these books, and I ended up being interested in them because of her. Now, I had watched the first 2 movies before I read these books. I went in, again, not knowing anything with the movies or the books. I thought the movies were okay. I mean, I thought that Lana Condor did an amazing job as the main character before reading the books, and I still think that she did a great job. I think the representation was very sorely missed for an actual Korean American to play that role, but that's a whole thing with like the movie casting that like I'm not reviewing the movies, so I'm not going to talk about that. Part of the reason why I wanted to read the books after watching the movies is because I watched Chanel's video on her reacting to the movies, especially the second one when she was talking about John Ambrose McLaren and how dirty they did him and everything and how much she loves him in the books. And that got me really curious because, you know, when you watch the movie, like, he doesn't stand out. There's nothing special about him. And there's nothing really special about any of the characters in the movies. So I was like, how much better could the books be? Now, the only things that I kind of knew about the books going into them, aside from what I got from the movies, is that the main character is half Korean and half white. And she is Korean American, which as a Korean person, you would think that would make me more inclined to read these books, but I don't tend to find representation for Koreans or maybe Asians in general done super well in books, especially YA contemporary. So it didn't interest me that much at all, honestly. It wasn't a leading factor into why I was interested in reading these books. So the first book I gave 3.5 stars, the second book I gave 4.5 stars, and the third book I gave 4 stars. So it's kind of all over the place. So I'll just get into it really quickly about why. So the first book, it was entertaining enough. I feel like I already gleaned almost everything that happened in this book from the movie. It didn't differ too much aside from the character depth and the storylines with that. But other than that, a lot of it was very, very similar. The thing that bothered me, the reason why I gave it a 3.5 and why I didn't enjoy it that much, is because of the representation of a Korean person in this book. Like, all 3 sisters are supposed to be Korean Americans, and yet there was like nothing Korean about them. Like, it felt like, I know that the author Jenny Han is Korean herself, but it felt like someone who's not Korean wrote about a Korean character, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm the only person who thought that. I feel like I've heard other people say how great it was to see representation, but for me, I was just like, it felt not realistic, maybe to me personally. My experiences being a full Korean person, I'm sure it's different as like someone who is mixed, especially because their mother This isn't a spoiler, by the way, because I think everybody knows this, but the mother is the Korean parent and she is not around. She passed away. So the father, who is white, he's the one that raises them and he tries to preserve their culture. I don't know. The representation overall, I can't get into it too much because there wasn't even that much about it. So yeah, 3.5 stars for this one. For the second book, I gave 4.5 stars. I liked this one significantly better than the last one. One of the main reasons is because I felt like the representation was done a lot better. There were some scenes in this book where the family and the father specifically put in a lot more effort to participate and show and learn about their Korean heritage, and that was really cool to read about. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler or not for people who are going into this genuinely not knowing anything, so I'm just gonna raise my hand until the spoiler is over. John Ambrose McLaren, he is the reason why I gave this book a 4.5 stars, and I don't regret it for a second. He and Laura Jean would have been such a beautiful couple if they had stayed together. They were so compatible with each other. I understand all the reasons why they stuck with Kavinsky, but I kind of hate it, honestly. Now, I said that I watched the first 2 movies before reading these books. So I know that in the books, he's described as being white and blonde, but I absolutely refuse to acknowledge that. I refuse to think that Laura Jean is so basic that she would only have crushes on white boys. So I pictured him the whole time as the delicious, beautiful, handsome Jordan Fisher as he was played in the movie. I loved him so much. I just wish that she had given him a real shot. Spoiler over. But anyway, I felt like overall this book was written better, the story was more interesting. Jenny Han's writing style, from what I can glean of these books, now I haven't read any of her other books, just from these books, is very easy to read. It's well done, I enjoyed it. It was simple, but in a good way simple, not like the other book. It was enjoyable to read from start to finish. I didn't give it a 5 stars because I didn't absolutely love it. Like a 5 stars is like, oh my God, it's gonna be in my heart forever. I will think about it every day for the rest of my life. And this is not that, but I did really enjoy this. Now the 4th book, I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I keep thinking though a lot these days that I feel like maybe it's teetering more on a 4.5 the more that I think about it, just because it was a lot different from the first 2 books, because at this point, Laura Jean and Peter Kavinsky are seniors. They're like moving on to college soon. It's them a year after the last book, which the last 2 books were like back to back, and then this one's like a year into the future. So it's great to see that they have progressed as a couple and their relationship has grown. They still obviously have little skirmishes here and there, like with any couple, especially in high school, but it was still really great to read. Now, I personally can't really relate to all of the things that Laura Jean is going to. My experience in high school and all of that after is very different, but it felt really realistic reading about Laura Jean and Peter Kavinsky's struggles with what they're gonna do after high school, what school they're gonna go together, and what it's like being a high school couple trying to move on together. I absolutely flew through this book. It was so great to read. For me, typically, I tend to borrow books from the library that I don't really plan on buying, or I don't know if I'll buy, because I don't know how much I'll enjoy them. And I was seriously originally considering on just buying these books as hardcovers to put on my bookshelf, but I just don't think that the spines are very pretty. But I enjoyed these books enough that I would definitely want to reread them and own my own copy in the future. So I'm definitely planning on buying these myself in the future. And last but not least, I also read the Folk of the Air series. I literally just yesterday finished my reading vlog of this series, and I don't know if that is up before or after this, just because this video is a little bit more time sensitive, but I do go into depth in that vlog about my thoughts on these, so I'll just put it very simply. I love them. I love them so much. I gave them all really high rankings, so I gave Cruel Prince 4 stars, I gave The Wicked King 4.5, and I gave The Queen of Nothing 5 stars. So, like I said earlier, 5 stars means I am absolutely obsessed. And this book, I will never get over the fact that Holly Black managed to write a 3-book series where each book is no more than 300 to 400 pages, and yet there's so much depth and so much that's happening in these books, and I love it so much. I have so much respect for her. I absolutely loved her writing. I loved everything about these books, everything that was in them. And as you can see, I have the Barnes & Noble exclusive editions because I just love that they all match rather than the regular ones that I don't feel like match very well, and they wouldn't look that nice on my bookshelf. So yeah, if you want to hear more about my thoughts and what it was like for me reading these for the very first time, go watch that vlog if it's up or whatever. I will try to link it somewhere. I don't know, I'm super new to this, so I'm not sure if I can figure that out, but yeah. Now, an honorable mention. So originally I really wanted to do a reading vlog for these books as well because they're extremely hyped, extremely popular, and I really wanted to react to them and film it and everything, but I ended up not being able to do that. I don't remember the reason why. I think it just got kind of chaotic around that time, but I actually read these books at the end of last month, like literally in the last few days of October, so they're not part of this wrap up, but I just wanted to include them because I want a chance to talk about them. And it's the Six of Crows series. I'm not sure if they have another name. I think it's just the Six of Crows series. As you can see, I have the collector's edition for both of them. Now, I'm not sure if you guys do this as well, but for me, I will a lot of times buy special editions of books that I've never read before if I think that I'm gonna like them anyway. Like if there's a good chance I'm gonna like them, I will definitely spend the money on them. And for these, I had an inkling that I was absolutely gonna love them. And even if I didn't, oh my God, these books are stunning. Like absolutely stunning. I knew I had to get them regardless because of the covers, the sprayed edges, and specifically for the fan art that's in these, like the art cards that are in the backs of both of these books. I honestly would have bought these just for those. I love fan art so much, and so the fact that it's included in these books was just awesome. So I'll just talk really quickly about what I thought about them because I really want a chance to talk about them even though they aren't part of this video, but basically I love them so much. Now the first book I was spoiled a little bit for because the Six of Crows fandom is so huge, and so I feel like it's impossible at this point, having had them be released for a while now, to not go into these books at least a little bit spoiled. So I enjoyed it a lot, but there were parts that I pretty much predicted or expected would happen because of the spoilers. This book, however, I actively avoided any spoilers because I did not want anything to ruin my experience for this. And oh my God, this book was monumental. This book is beautiful. I cried. I gotta say, I didn't really cry at any points in this book, which is surprising, but this book, like the last 100 or so pages, I was just bawling my eyes out, and it was beautiful, and I regret nothing. It was awesome. And now I'm obsessed with Six of Crows fan art, so here we are. Okay, so those were the 10 books that I read this month, as well as those last two that I just threw in there for fun. Like I said at the beginning of this book, I have about 11 books left to read in December if I want to hit my 50 book mark, and I really do because I've been trying really hard. But there has been a kink thrown into the works, and I'm really bummed. So because of the fact that COVID-19 cases have been rising again in LA, and that's where I live, a lot of things are closing down again. So literally this morning, I got an email from my library saying that they are closed yet again. And so the books that I have that are on hold, they are extending them until February, basically. But that also means that I won't be able to borrow any new books. And I'm really now I have several books that I already have on loan from the library that I now can't return, that I can still read, as well as several other books that I have on my bookshelf that I haven't read yet. But it's just a little bit of a bummer because if there were any books that I felt like reading in December, now there's no way for me to pick them up from the library at all. Now, I'm not someone who does a TBR ever. Like I have my to be read list on Goodreads of all the books I want to read in general, but because I'm a mood reader, I only read books that sound interesting to me at the moment. So I can never have a concrete list of books that I'm definitely gonna read because that could change. That could absolutely change in a minute. So you'll pretty much never see me do an actual TBR. Who knows? Hopefully I'll be able to hit that 50 book mark. If not, I don't know. If I do or I don't, you guys will probably see it in a wrap up for next month with my thoughts of the books that I do read. Fingers crossed that I actually get it because there's nothing worse than being super close to a goal and not hitting it. I will be devastated if I don't hit this goal because 11 sounds like a lot of books, but some of the books that I have are a little bit shorter. And at this point, I've been doing this since August. 50 books I don't know, it could not sound like a lot, but now I'm suddenly regretting all those times that I had available to actually read books and I chose not to. So hopefully I do. Anyway, I hope that this video was interesting for you guys. Let me know if any of the books that I've showed to you guys that you guys have never heard of or seen before or read yet, if they sound interesting to you now or what your thoughts are. So I'd love to know them. And if you guys have any recommendations for books that you think I might like based off of my ratings for these books, let me know. I would love to know some recommendations. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you watched all of this, I again don't know how long this is gonna be. I kind of tried to talk fast, but thanks for watching anyway. And I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully. Bye.